Hi everyone, McGregor Card here, and in this video we're going to go over how to install the flight controller, the video transmitter, the camera, and the receivers onto the Hawk Pro. For this installation we will need our soldering iron and solder, the flight controller, and the pin header socket that comes with the flight controller, the VTX and the pin header that comes with the VTX, the UFL connector to SMA pigtail that connects to the VTX, and the cable that connects the flight controller to the ESC. Now the ESC comes with a cable that is too short for the application, but in our kit we provide a link to the longer cable that you will need to buy to do this build. You'll also need the camera, the cables that come with the camera, and the VTX antenna. In this video we will show you how to install both the TBS Crossfire Nano receiver for long-range flying or the Emax D9 receiver for regular flying. First, we're going to prep our flight controller and our VTX. Then we're going to conformal coat the flight controller, VTX, and the receiver. To prep the flight controller, you'll need the flight controller and the pin header socket that comes with the flight controller. What you'll need to do is place the pin header socket into these 4 holes you see on the flight controller. Then, holding it in place, you'll get your soldering iron, clean the tip, put some solder on the tip of the soldering iron, and place a small amount of solder on one of the pins and the pad to hold it in place. Once it solidifies, you can set it down, then get your solder, then solder each pin individually. When you're done, it should look like this. Now, we'll prep the video transmitter. Get the video transmitter and the pin header that came with the transmitter. You'll notice that one side of the pin header has longer leads than the other. You'll want to put the short leads into the bottom of these 4 holes on the video transmitter. Hold it in place and put a little bit of solder onto one of the pins and the pads. Then you can set it down and solder each pin individually. When you're done, it should look like this. Now this is an optional step, but it's one that we recommend, is that we conformal coat the flight controller, the video transmitter, and the receiver. So we're going to go ahead and do that by putting a thin coat on all of the electronics on the board. You want to be very careful to not get conformal coating inside the boot button, the USB jack, this connector, or this connector. Go ahead and brush on a thin coat on all the components. Like we said in the ESC video, this conformal coating protects against moisture, so if you're flying in an area with damp grass or in the snow, and if you crash, it'll protect the flight controller and the electronics from getting wet and causing problems. And grab the VTX. On the VTX, you just want to be careful to not get conformal coating inside the button or on these connector pins. Also be careful to not get conformal coating on the inside of this connector. You can coat the pins on the back, but do not get conformal coating on the inside. Alright, we'll set that aside. Now we'll coat our receivers. This is the TBS Nano receiver, and you want to be careful not to get conformal coating inside this button or inside this connector. So coat everything else around it, but do not get conformal coating inside the button or connector. It's a good idea to take this sticker off the bottom so that you can conformal coat the electronics underneath. This is the Emax D8 receiver. On this, you want to make sure not to get conformal coating inside the button. After conformal coating those parts, we waited about 30 minutes and now they're ready to go. So what we're going to do is get the flight controller, and first off we're going to show you how to mount the TBS Crossfire Nano receiver. Now the stock antenna that comes on the Crossfire isn't the greatest. As you can see, the wires are kind of thin, and if this gets hit by a prop, it's going to break instantly. So we like to use the TBS Immortal T extended antenna. To install the Immortal T antenna, we need to very carefully remove this connector. Go ahead and put the Immortal T on. Try to have the connector go straight down onto the receptacle without tilting to either side. Next, we need to solder on the wires. The TBS Nano receiver comes with wires you can attach. The first wire we're going to put on is the ground wire, and it will go to this pad right here. So go ahead, get your soldering iron and tin the pad. If you want, you can go ahead and tin all the pads while you're at it. Then, because these wires are already pre-tinned, you can go ahead and attach the ground wire to this square pad first. Then the next one will be the 5-volt pad, or the power pad. Then we'll attach the 2 signal wires. Then what I like to do is put a little twist in the wires to help hold them together. Now the TBS receiver comes with some heat shrink. This helps add a layer of protection once it's shrunk down on top of the receiver. Cut the heat shrink to size, letting it overlap the sides just a little bit. Then slide the heat shrink over the wires and onto the receiver. Then, using a hairdryer, a heat gun, or a cigarette lighter, you can shrink the heat shrink down onto the receiver. If you're using a cigarette lighter, keep the flame moving and don't let it sit in one spot for too long. When you're done, it should look like this. The heat shrink should be covering the connector, shrunk down on both ends, and be mostly smooth. So now that we've got the heat shrink on, we're going to attach it to the top of the flight controller. To do this, you'll need a small piece of VHB or double-sided adhesive. Place the double-sided adhesive on the bottom of the receiver. Remove the cover. I like to fold the wires over like this and mount it right here on the flight controller. Then I can run the wires over and to the underside of the flight controller where we'll be soldering them down. The pins we'll be using are 5-volt ground and the UART RX2 and TX2. So you can go ahead and route the wires. The 2 signal wires will be going over here to these pads, which are RX2 and TX2, and the power will be going to the 5-volt pad right here and the ground pad right here. So what we'll do is cut and strip these wires to length. Give yourself a little bit of slack in the wire and cut it off close to where you'll need it. Strip off about 1/8 of an inch of insulation off each wire. And then tin the wires and the pads. Clean your solder tip first. Then tin the 2 UART pads that are right here. You can see them labeled RX2 and TX2. Just be careful not to bridge the solder between them. Tin the ground pad. And the 5-volt pad. Hold the wire, then using a pair of tweezers, grab the red wire and solder it onto the 5-volt pad. Do the same with the black wire onto the ground pad. Now, with the 2 signal wires, we need to make sure that they're going to the correct pads. If we look back at the receiver, we need to take note that this pad in the middle, connected to the yellow wire, is going to be signal 1. That wire will need to go to RX2. The white wire that is signal 2 on the receiver needs to go to TX1. Turn the flight controller over and solder the correct wire onto the correct pad. Our white wire is going to TX2. And our yellow wire is going to RX2. You'll want to move the wires out of the way to make room for the standoff that will go right here. That's how you install the TBS Nano receiver onto your Emax flight controller. Now if I were to continue installing this, I would first need to get our flight controller to ESC cable, plug it into this connector on the bottom of the flight controller, try to be careful not to pinch the wires, then fold the wires underneath. Now we need to plug the other end into the connector on the ESC. You can use a pair of tweezers to gently hold the wires to help you position the connector. Then push it the rest of the way in with your fingers. Then you need to flip the flight controller so this side is up. Tuck the wires down underneath and then place the flight controller onto the standoffs. Then you can take the TBS Immortal T antenna and zip tie it to the bottom of the arm, pulling up the extra slack into the area where the canopy will cover. You want to use 2 zip ties to zip tie the antenna into place. I usually like to do it in a crisscross pattern, going underneath the motor wires and crossing over the antenna like this. With the first zip tie. Then, with the second zip tie, going under the motor wires, cross over the antenna like this, then tighten both zip ties. And trim off the excess. That is how you install the TBS Nano receiver onto the Hawk Pro. We're now going to show you how to install the Emax D8 receiver. To do this, we'll need to pull some wire off our spools and attach it to the receiver. Now you only need about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of wire. Try to make them the same length. Measure out about 1.5 inches and cut it off. Then strip the ends of the wire to about 1/8 of an inch on both sides. Then tin the ends of the wire. And while you're at it, go ahead and tin these 3 holes on the receiver. Now we'll attach the wires onto the receiver. It's important to note which wire will go where. The ground wire will go on this pad right here, closest to the side with the button. The power wire will go in the middle hole right here. And the signal wire will go in the hole on the right side. Now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and mount the flight controller on top of the speed controller. To do this, we're going to need the cable that connects the ESC to the flight controller. Go ahead and put the cable onto the ESC first. You might need to use some tweezers to help position the connector onto the socket. Go ahead and push it in the rest of the way until it bottoms out and it's secure. Now, plug the other end into the connector on the bottom of the flight controller. Now you want to tuck the wires down underneath the flight controller like this. Then place the flight controller onto the 4 standoffs. Now we'll need to prep the pads for the receiver on the flight controller. We'll be using the 3 pads you see here, marked S-bus, 5 volts, and negative. Go ahead and tin the pads. Now that we have our pads tinned, we'll go ahead and attach our wires. Our yellow wire is our signal wire, and that will go to the S-bus pad. Our red wire is our power wire, and it will go to the 5 volt pad. You might need to use tweezers to help you hold the wire down. Then the black wire will go to the pad labeled negative. Pay close attention and make sure that none of these pads gets a solder bridge or a short in between them. Now we'll want to put a little bit of heat shrink over top of the receiver to help protect it. Get your heat shrink and cut it to a length so that it will just cover the receiver. Put it over top of the antenna and slide it over the receiver. Then, using a hairdryer, heat gun, or a cigarette lighter, we'll want to shrink the heat shrink down onto the receiver. If you're using a cigarette lighter, you want to make sure you keep the flame moving and don't hold it in one spot too long. Then you'll want to use a small piece of double-sided sticky tape to hold the receiver down on top of the flight controller. To do this, place the tape on the back of the receiver and remove the plastic, and then place the receiver down on top of the flight controller like this. When you're done, it should look something like this, with the wires tucked in to the side and the antenna hanging out the back. Next, we'll move on to installing the camera. You want to get your Emax Caddx camera and get the cables that came with it. One cable has 3 wires, and that will plug into this 3-prong socket. Go ahead and plug it in. There's also a connector with 1 green wire, and that will go into the 2-pin socket. First, we'll want to tin the pads that these wires will attach to. These 4 pads right here on the front of the flight controller are going to be the ones we will attach to. Go ahead and tin them. And then also tin the wires on the camera. If you want to, you can twist the wires a little bit to keep them organized. First, we're going to attach the black ground wire, and it will go on this pad in the middle. Then, the red power wire will go on the pad next to it, which is this one right here. Next will be the video signal, which is what we will connect our yellow wire to, and that is this pad right here. Then we'll connect our green OSD wire to this pad behind the video pad. Now inspect your work and make sure there are no shorts or solder bridges in between these pads. Then you can go ahead and slide the camera in onto the camera bracket. When you're done, it should look like this. We have the Emax D8 receiver installed and the wires connecting here, the camera connected and the wires installed in the front, and the cable going between the flight controller and ESC installed and plugged in. In the next video, we'll be installing the VTX pigtail, the canopy, the video transmitter cable, and we also have an optional GPS receiver we can install, which we will show you in the next video. If you have any questions, definitely let us know, and have fun flying.